Here we go.
Hey, everyone. We're sorry for starting late. I'll be right there. I just got to fix one thing right back.
Yeah, we're having some technical problems. Russ, just to start this off, I said this on Twitter yesterday, and I got some positive responses. This could be, well, this is one of the 2 times of the sporting year that is, I call them like sinkholes. This is the worst time of the sports year. There's no NFL. The NFL is like weeks away from training camp. Free agency in the NHL and the NBA is slowed down. Major League Baseball is on their all-star break. And all we had to watch last night, and if you're into soccer, the World Cup ended on Sunday. So all you had last night was to watch was the home run derby. So, I mean, and I used to watch it, but I don't really care about it anymore.
You missed something. Home run derby was great. Bryce Harper hit about 9 homers in, I want to say 30 seconds or less to tie the competition up, and then he literally had bonus time, and all he had to do was hit 1 homer in 30 seconds to win it over Kyle Schwarber. And so he did that. The amazing thing was, though, they had this little analytics crew, and I didn't watch every minute, right? I kept flipping back, and apparently they picked Rhys Hoskins to come in dead last, and he didn't come in dead last. He advanced. You can't do analytics on a home run derby competition when you've got a hitting coach grooving them in however you want, and a player who could take a break and also get bonus time for hitting like a 466-foot homer. So these are things that when you start to do analytics, you look kind of stupid. And it even got down to the end where they were like, hey, Bryce Harper's got to hit like a homer every 5 seconds or he's going to be eliminated. So it doesn't look good. And he did that. He exceeded that. And that's where you can't accomplish something via math, because the human body can do amazing things when it has adrenaline and you feel like you could do it. Plus, you have a pitcher who knows where to throw them for you. And when you put those 2 things together, there's no mathematical equation that will tell you how somebody's going to perform. So Bryce Harper was great, and I think he saved the home run competition last night.
Well, what they fail to recognize is this is not game conditions. This is not – you don't have pitcher there that's trying to strike you out. He's trying to move it to you so you can hit it 500 feet.
Right.
So, I mean, but, the funny thing is that, great, Bryce Harper wins the home run hitting contest, and I looked, he's hitting 214 right now, so I think he's costing himself maybe he helped his stock a little bit, but I think
he did with that. But you're right, he probably cost himself a little. One little side note, I still like the MLB All-Star Game. I will harken back to 1979 when Lee Mazzilli got a home run to tie it, and a walk off a very famous Yankee pitcher to win it. Who was the Yankee pitcher, Mike?
79. Was it Goose?
Guidry.
It was Guidry. It was one or the other. I mean, I wasn't sure.
Ron Guidry walked in Lee Mazzilli, and that was the winning run.
Was that the game in Seattle?
I think it was in Seattle.
That's the famous game with the Dave Parker throw from
throw from the outfield. Yes.
Yeah. Please, I've seen.
I think he sailed forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think he gunned the guy out at home or at third base. And
I think it was at third. It was Seattle. Yeah, it was in the Kingdom.
Yeah, Dave Parker had one of the best arms. And see, this is the thing, and this was what sort of saddens me about. I mean, first of all, and I know if Ack hears this,
I've got something Ack will like in a second, though.
Well, but the Pro Bowl, the NFL Pro Bowl is trash. The NBA All-Star Game is trash. The NHL, for all their effort and everything to try to make it competitive and try to make it entertaining, the skills competition is interesting. The game itself is abysmal to watch, and Major League Baseball is the only one that used to have some some consequence and some interest, and even that has gotten to the point. Like Chris Sale and Max Scherzer, I think, are going to start tonight. They're going to pitch an inning. Who the frig cares?
I know, and it's the second year in a row they've started both of them. Look, I used to live and die with Seaver. He used to get 2 or 3 innings sometimes, and sometimes he wouldn't get in because there were so many pitchers. But one other thing, I put up an article yesterday on Sportsology about the potential trading of Manny Machado. And the one thing I mentioned in the article that Eck will love is that I mentioned that, hey, I know the Phillies and the Brewers are being mentioned here. And I wrote about, hey, Philly radio was like, oh, we're going to get Manny Machado. It's almost a done deal. Jason Stark said it's almost a done deal. And I wrote, I wonder who the mystery third team will be in this. This morning, I wake up and there is a mystery third team, and now it's the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I just had to laugh because, we talk about this all the time, and it doesn't matter what sport it is. There is always a team that will swoop in last minute.
This is the thing.
Always.
They weren't a mystery team. They've been talked about for weeks.
No, but people forgot about them, and they weren't really mentioned prominently for about a week or two. But it's just one of those things where, again, it's that mystery third team I always get a chuckle out of.
Oh, yeah, they weren't there all along, and they probably were. But no one knew about it, or someone didn't want us to write about it, or something like that. The big news, though, you guys are really burying the big news today.
Okay.
Not hockey-related, which is the return of Lando Calrissian in the next Star Wars movie.
No, but we knew that a week ago.
Billy D. Williams, man, coming back in. That's exciting.
I thought you were going to say that they're making a Downton Abbey movie.
They said it a week ago, and I didn't post or talk about it because, I was wrong that he wasn't in Solo, but I knew he'd be back. And,
I love
that makes me partially look good, the fact that he is back.
Yeah, he brings back the coolness to Star Wars in a lot of ways.
Now, will Lando be drinking some Colt 45 on some faraway planet?
Yeah, Lando was always like, you kind of got the impression that he was like a swinger, he's kind of like, he was just like, I don't know, he was so cool.
Yeah, I don't know if he was a swinger. Like, I'm not
he had like lava lamps in his room and stuff like that. And he
was trying to get with Leia.
He was so. I mean, he was always just like, yeah, you do it.
He was the coolest in the room. It didn't matter.
Yeah, right. He's always close in the room, and he's 83. Billy Williams is 83 years old.
Doesn't matter.
So they're gonna wheel him out.
Looks amazing for 83, though, I have to say. Anyway, let's get started.
Colt 45 is a magic elixir. He's drinking Take a Boost.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I am drinking Take a Boost out of my my Wyoming mug. Here we go. Ready? Hockey World. It's Tuesday, July 17th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And I want to start out today with a little rumor that I heard, because that's what I do, little rumors. And this one is that I know we talked a lot about Erik Karlsson. We're going to keep talking about Erik Karlsson until he gets signed because he is still the big fish out there.
Or traded.
What was that?
Or traded.
Or traded. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking it's pretty much the same thing, signed and traded.
Okay.
Because really, he's not going to get traded without getting signed. Although it'll happen the other way.
Anyway.
But anyway, the point is this: Tampa's getting frustrated by the whole situation, I was told, and has put a deadline on it. The mixed reviews on what that deadline is, depending on who I talk to, but more people than not are saying that this Friday, 5 o'clock is the deadline. So
today, 5 o'clock today?
This Friday.
Oh, this Friday.
Okay,
so end of business this week.
End of business this week, and at which time, and Tampa has been frustrated, I'm told, by the lack of any movement or creativity in the last week or so by Ottawa. Now, I wrote over the weekend that there were people that I knew that were saying that Ottawa was trying to figure out a way to perhaps get him to come back, to perhaps get him to figure out a way, like, okay, this is where it's at. Maybe I don't know. We'd go to him and say, what do you want? Do you want Melnick to sell the team? He'll sell the team, whatever you want. But basically, the Ottawa situation was getting interesting in that they were trying to push, and then that didn't go very well, to the point where yesterday there's some really, right near the arena, there's some big billboard where he Karlsson's always been on this billboard, and it was taken down yesterday. So that was pretty predictable that you didn't think that was going to go well. But the Senators, I think, you would expect them to, since they're not getting what they want and they're not getting the situation's not going their way, you would expect them to make that move and try. Which I guess they did, but it doesn't sound like anything's going to come of that. So if not Tampa by Friday, this thing basically, I was told, just kind of opens wide up again.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not like Dallas is ready to jump in, because Dallas what Dallas is offering isn't very good, I was told, and they're willing to wait Ottawa out. It's not like. Well,
this is the picture right now. Apparently, is that Dallas and any other teams other than Tampa are offering deals that are essentially deals consistent with 1-year rentals. They're not willing, and I'm Tampa is probably stepping up, and we're not privy to what exactly they're offering, but they have to be offering more than that to get Carlson to be able to sign him to the 8-year extension. Yeah. But that's the quandary that Dorian faces. It's like, okay, well, we have the option here of trading him to Dallas and say it's, Julius Honka and a 1st-round pick and Rupi Hintz or something like that. That's been like a rumored type of deal.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good if you trade him at the deadline, but that's not a deal when he has a year left at $6.5 million that he could really, push you into the playoffs and make Dallas a very dangerous team in the Western Conference.
Right.
Tampa, if I'm Dorian and I'm talking Tampa and we know that Carlson wants to sign there, it starts with Sergachev and it keeps going.
Yeah, and I've heard that name has been mentioned. I've heard that name is possible. And I think that is within the realm of reason. Now, you're right.
2 or 3 pieces, Zach, not just one.
Yeah, I know. But I think, and you're right in terms of I've heard the 1-year thing, but I think the 1-year thing is pointless because I don't think that's going anywhere. And I think that,
well, right now it's not going anywhere. What I'm saying is if this week passes and Ottawa is not able to get Tampa to step up and make a more attractive offer, then I think Dorian's going to have to. And this, I remember you saying something about this earlier this week or on the weekend. It could be that Carlson just stays there until closer to the deadline or stays there into the season. He is not going to sign an extension with Ottawa. There is no way in hell if the ownership has anything to do with Eugene Melnyk, there is no way that Erik Karlsson's signing a deal.
Right, and I was saying last week that I didn't see any way he could even play this year for them, right? But I think you may be right because I talked to some people about this, and they said no, that Karlsson would stay and play, and he would just be the pro about it, which is
honor the contract, and play it out, and because the way I've talked to a couple people who love the way it went with Tavares. They loved. Right. And, so it's like you play it out, you just go to free agency where you have so much more control. You can it's such a better situation for you. I know, granted, it's on 7 years versus 8 years, right? But it's such a better situation. Yeah.
I think it's going to wait until the deadline. I just had that feeling.
Yeah, it's starting to get that. I mean, now the other thing I've heard, and, is and that's not a diaper, by the way, down there. I was just looking at that. Someone was someone tweeted me out that's a right there. No, that is
okay.
They were painting this wall over here, so that's left over from that painting thing. Sorry about that. I will clean that up, but I can't. But here's something that I've heard: as many as 2 or 3 conditional picks thrown into this deal. So, like, if you have like a 1-year deal, you say, okay, it's a 1-year deal, but if he signs an extension, you're looking at a 1st, a 2nd, and a 3rd another year. So something that's really significant. That might be a lot more than significant, but I'm just saying, something where you have, we've seen these before. If the player signs there again, or if this happens, or if the team plays, 7 games, that go into triple overtime, the guy gets, I'm just saying, there's all sorts of conditions you can throw in trades. So this is one of them. I think you can see that as well. I do get the sense though that Ottawa feels with everything that's happened that they got to make a trade now. And even though Karlsson is willing to go into the end of the year, I can't. Like I was saying last week, I can't see Karlsson playing there. And I will admit that I was thinking in terms of from his perspective, but I can also see that from Ottawa's perspective. That you don't want him playing there next year because it's just the longer this drags out, I mean, the worse it is in general, right?
It will be a thing where it gets in the way of the team. It will be a distraction.
Yeah.
Just as Tavares was a distraction with the island, but the funny thing is, like, the situations are similar. I mean, the building, the building of LeBreton Flats and the discontent within the organization with the ownership. There's similar situations, but I mean, I would hope that Dorian has learned the lesson from Garth Snow. You don't say hold your fire. I mean, Garth Snow's main failing in this whole situation, and I'm just going to talk about this for a second because I think the situations are applicable. Garth Snow's main failing in the entire Tavares situation is that he did not get a hard and fast answer from him last July to say deal or no deal. We'll extend you right now for 8 years.
That's not. I'm not putting that on Garth Snow though. He tried, and
then you trade him. If he says I'm going to play out the deal, then you know what? I can't take that risk. Now he's holding a bunch of crap. He's got nothing.
I can't stand the fact that Tavares or Garth Snow are taking crap for this because, to be honest, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, there's no question. You were in the press conference. You say yourself that Tavares wanted to stay in
right,
and so he's sitting there last year at the deadline. And he's saying, "I want to stay on the island." That's what he's saying. And but you
as a team have to precipitate that contract and offer, or it doesn't happen.
Right.
But I don't think that anyone thought he would leave. I really.
Oh, come on.
No, I don't. And
no, I'm not buying that.
Okay.
I'm telling you, and you can say that they were wrong to feel that way, and I would agree with you on that. That they should have thought he could leave. But when I'm talking to people within there, I never got the impression once that they thought he was going to leave.
If they didn't think he was going to leave, they wouldn't have brought Lou in. So they brought Lou in to try and save.
I'm talking about at the deadline last year. It changed over the course of the year, and when it went into the summer, and they tried to open talks and stuff like that, and weren't getting anywhere.
But see, the problem is that okay, if the talk is I want to stay on the island, okay, we'll prove it. We will give you $11 million at 8 times 8 years right now, right this second. If you're bound and determined to go to July 1st, we can't take the chance that you may not change your mind at the 11th hour. It's completely Tavares' right to do so, and I think
it tells us until now, and Tavares changed that, right? I mean, we had a great relationship until 4 hours ago. No, but all I'm saying is precedent tells us that the guy was going to re-sign. Because that's what happens all the time, right? So, I don't think the Islanders ever thought that, and we're joined by Peter Tessier. Peter, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Sorry for the late arrival.
All right,
better late than never.
You're far away. It takes a while to get here. Yeah, I understand that. So we're talking about Tavares again, but really we're talking about Karlsson. So I want to get back to Karlsson because the precedent has been set now that Karlsson's looking and saying, okay, if I play this out, it's not so bad. I can pick where I want to go. I can there's teams out there. I don't make that team any worse because that's a big thing too. By him going to somewhere next year, Tavares comes to Toronto, and if Toronto would have had to have traded for him,
yes,
they would have had to have given up something very significant, right? So he comes to Toronto now fully stocked, and that's that does screw the Islanders. But I think people need to lay off Tavares and Snow for the trade deadline thing. I just think that was too.
The one difference in this situation is there's no equivocating here. Karlsson is going to leave. He is not going to sign.
Right, that's very different. It's a huge difference, and you're absolutely right about that. So he's going to leave. Whether
the one positive here, and about say they hold on to him to the deadline, and if he returns to the way he has been in the past, they will be a better team with him up until the deadline, and with them not having their first round pick, if they keep him to the deadline and he plays well, they can get a big return at the deadline, and they avoid finishing at the bottom of the league and giving Colorado a top 5 pick. So if that's a concern, that's one positive here.
Yeah, I mean, that does, and he's gonna, that'll be a thing that Karlsson will, in the back of his head, I think he'll play for that. He will try to keep them out of that.
He's gonna play to get his
deal too, but also I think he's a. I
wouldn't worry about him not playing.
Right. I mean, but I think like I've said before, whenever something like this happens to a team like this in the NHL, I always get nervous about predicting where they're going to finish. Like Ottawa or the Islanders are two teams that are very tricky to pick for next year, and everyone's simply saying, "Oh, they're both in the race for the first overall pick." I'm not convinced because weird things happen to teams when they're put through adversity like this. And it doesn't mean that they're going to win Stanley Cups, but they could be a factor, and they could be in the playoff hunt. So that's at least for a while. But let me move on to a couple other things because I spent the weekend in Boston because I take my daughter up too. She's doing a summer program up at Wellesley, and it's very cool. It's a beautiful city. Of course, I love Boston, and I went on a whale watch, which was amazing. absolutely incredible.
Great as long as you don't get sick on the boat. I've had both experiences.
Oh yeah, no, we saw 13 whales.
Wow.
Great until you get your credit card bill. But it can
No.
It's fun though. He's right. It's fun.
I have a great story about that I can't share. But anyway, all right. So, but I'll share with you guys off the air after this about the bill and this thing. It was really hilarious. So anyway, all right. So I'm up in Boston and I met for lunch with the great Ty Anderson, okay, who is one of my favorite people that's ever written for the site, and he's still writing. He's still writing with us. Occasionally we're having a new writer coming in, but he's also going to be writing more NHL columnist type stuff. So Ty's not going anywhere. He's staying with us. I talked to him about it at length. He's actually going to do something in August on all 31 teams, like one team a day for the 31 days, which I think is really cool.
Cool.
So, and I was talking to him about Lucic because the rumor I was hearing that day was that the Montreal Canadiens were now actually considering trading for Milan Lucic. Okay, so before I had written that Edmonton had gone to them and they had said no. But now that had been reopened up a little bit, now Montreal was considering trading for Lucic. So I wrote this yesterday. I wanted to see what your opinions were on that concept. I mean, and what's funny about the whole thing, I always think of Montreal and Boston as being such arch rivals that it seems crazy, right? That Lucic could go there first off, because I still think of Lucic as a Bruin. But then you do have Julian there in Montreal, right? Who was a big Lucic guy. And really gave, and Lucic was such a legend in Boston. But also I also heard that Julian wasn't thrilled with the way it ended in Boston with Lucic, and that he thought Lucic got a little bit too into himself as like a cult hero in the town and wanted too much money. So there's all kinds of different things going on, right? So just on the concept of it, Montreal going after Milan Lucic.
Well, the only way it makes sense. And Peter, you've seen Edmonton more than Russ and I have. The only way it makes sense is if Montreal is getting rid of a contract in exchange for Lucic that they think it was either a mistake or is not worth it. And I look at Montreal's depth chart, and the two names that pop out are Alzner, who is got 4 more years at I think it's $4.6 million. And an Andrew Shaw who's being paid over $3 million. If it's a deal where one of those guys is going back to Edmonton and they clear space, maybe it makes a little sense. But the thing is, you can't ignore Lucic is slowing down.
Yeah.
And the Atlantic Division is not a slow division.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, no, he is slowing down, and it's really hard to understand what is the problem in a specific sense of what's going on with Milan Lucic, because he has some underlying numbers that are really interesting, and he did well with LA. In fact, what was happening on the ice when he was on the ice was a really good thing.
Yeah.
And, he had success in Boston.
Yeah.
And why with players like McDavid is he not finding success? Let's use that. So, and Draisaitl and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. What is the mix there? So I think anyone who's looking at Lucic has to really think about what's the problem as to where his production's gone. And is it just simply getting bigger and slower in a league that's getting faster and lighter? And is that part of it? But, any deal for Edmonton that's going to come through this, it's going to be really difficult to make because they have an impending cap problem too. And they need to, they can't really take much back without hamstringing them. So, I mean, you look at, Shaw's a really good example, Mike, but for Montreal to take on Lucic, like Edmonton's, that's doing Edmonton a favor to almost send them Shaw.
Yeah,
Shaw's 3.9 for 4 more years, and I believe Lucic is $6 million for another 5 years.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I'll say about this to me, and then I want to hear Russ's opinion. Just suspiciously quiet.
No, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Okay, so I think that Lucic is more of an Eastern Conference player. I'll throw that out there. Like and the interesting thing about Lucic is like, so every time I post something on HockeyBuzz, and Mike puts up photos sometimes too, and when we put up photos on HockeyBuzz, right? If you search Milan Lucic on the service we pay, we pay a service to get our photos. You know what comes up? The first 15 pictures or something of Milan Lucic are him fighting someone.
Yeah.
All right, that's the first, and that is the first thing that comes up all the time. And it's interesting to me because look at the NHL where it is right now, and look what's important right now, and then look what's especially important. Like, it's one thing to be in the battles of the Bruins, Leafs, Bruins, Canadians, Leafs, Canadians, that whole world, right? Which still where you still need that sometimes. There's still that fighting thing. I don't see it in Edmonton. Like even in the Battle of Alberta, you don't see these like brawls. That's not that kind of rivalry, right? Where Shaw is also the same kind of thing. Like Shaw is the only two teams out west that I really see that way. Three teams out west that are that way are like LA, Las Vegas, and I'll put Nashville in there too as a team that can do that, right? So a lot of high flying teams out there, right? So, and Shaw's the same thing. Shaw's again, he's putting him out there. He's more known for that too. Now, Alsner, I think actually would be a good fit for Edmonton. Like I think Alsner
would be good there.
Don't you think so? I mean, I think that would make some sense.
I would, but
reinvigorate himself.
But here's what I want to say about Lucic, right?
Yeah.
I just looked up something. So here's the funny thing, and a lot of it's perception, but some of it's reality. So you look at Milan Lucic, you would think, you know what? With the success Tom Wilson has had, maybe he could play that role, right? Now, the interesting thing is Tom Wilson only had one more regular season point, but he had like 100 more PIMs. He had 187 PIMs. I didn't know it got that high. I don't know if you guys know it got that high.
I did. I just looked.
Yeah, but
I saw it too.
Oh, yeah, hold on. So I think the problem with Lucic is you can't use him as a scoring option anymore because I don't think he's getting 50 points anymore. You could use him in the Wilson role, but the problem is Wilson's faster, so you can't put Lucic on a top line. And so that's where Lucic now becomes like this third line, hope you can get 40 points out of him kind of guy. And at that contract, that's what makes it a detriment unless half of his contract is bought out.
Unless you're right. Unless Edmonton eats 1/3 of the deal, which will be $2 million for 5 years, which they won't want to do, but they probably would be willing to take a player back. But go ahead.
No, go ahead. I keep going, Mike. I was just going to add on to what you're saying here. I think I know.
I don't think Edmonton wants to tie up that kind of money for the 5-year term. But if they take almost, most of the money back in exchange for a player for a shorter term, they probably would be willing to do that because they realize that Lucic is not a good fit with where their team is. I think the problem is Lucic was always trailing the play in Edmonton because Edmonton's got a bunch of quicker forwards. And it's like, if he's on a line with McDavid, by the time McDavid's into the zone, he's still at the red line.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I wonder? And I'm gonna. It's like a wild ass thing. There's no law. Like I'll explain my logic. There's no reason to think this would happen. But what if Bergeron looks at his long-term liabilities and where he is and is saying, "I've got to undo some damage." So Bergevin. Sorry, I always screw that up. I have a mental block with those two names. Bergevin. So what if he says, "Okay, I don't have Shea Weber now till when's Weber supposed to come back? November, December, January. What if I try and move him and I take back a lesser liability?" And so here you go. You send Shea Weber out west. I don't think Shea Weber's a fit for Montreal, what they're doing. I don't think what they're going to get out of him is there. But then you move.
I don't.
Well, and then you move, bring in Lucic, but you bring in someone else. Because the problem with sending Alsner is the Oilers don't need right D. They don't need that. But if you send out a defenseman, you could bring in Weber, and you just sort of you maybe and saving yourself some money, because if you move someone like a Larson back east and a Weber, and then you sort of equal it up on the other side, you're going to have some options of salary cap, and Bergevin is going to be off the hook for 7 years, but I think they could absorb 7 years at that cap hit if you get rid of Lucic in Edmonton.
Yeah.
And I just think there's some funny ways to play with this. And I think what we're starting to see is GMs getting a little more creative, because I don't think anyone thought that Bergevin had the kind of game to trade for Mason and buy him out and get those picks for from the player and the player with Armia and buy him out with the Jets. Like, I don't think anyone thought Bergevin could be that creative. And so let's see if he's actually starting to get creative.
Well, here's the thing with Lucic, though. I'm going to read you his numbers from 2014, 21 even strength goals, then 16, then 18, then 11, then 7. Now, interestingly enough, though, 2 years ago, he did have 12 power play goals. And that has a lot to do with playing with Connor McDavid and playing on the power play with him. If Milan Lucic tells me as a guy he'll set up in the crease on the power play like Phil Esposito, then yeah, I think he can get back to 23 goals. If he doesn't, he's going to get 10 goals like he did last year. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the problem, I mean, the Weber contract, I mean, first of all, I can't see anybody trading for it right now based on the fact that we don't know how severe this injury, the meniscus tear is. You'd have to basically wait until December or January to get until he gets back in the lineup to see what you have left, because that contract is it's until 2026. So you're not going to roll the dice and say, okay, if he comes back as Shea Weber, we got a steal here. No, even, you have to find out whether he's back to any semblance of a level of talent that Shea Weber used to be. And then once that happens, then maybe it's possible for Montreal to move him. But can you imagine Bergevin moving Weber in a deal for Lucic, and then the Montreal faithful say, oh, we gave up PK Subban for Milan Lucic. Where's the torches? Let's burn Mark Bergevin.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, the torches are already out.
I think, but I don't think they care, Peter. They don't. I think at the end of the day, I think they look at Weber as one of their core guys, the same.
I've got something.
The same as Carey Price, and he's not going to get moved.
Okay,
that's the way I feel about that. I could be wrong, but I just think that's the way they look at it.
Yeah. No. There's a lot of talk about Chicago now in the after the Hossa deal, with them opening up cap space about what Stan Bowman is going to do next. I mean, we've heard the Pacioretty Skinner talk. I know that Lyle Richardson, also known as Spectre, was reporting something regarding them being in on Justin Falk. Now, this is Justin, the Chicago. There's a lot of Chicago speculation after the Hossa.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's because I wanted to speak for, because when you mentioned Justin Falk, because I wrote yesterday that, and I had heard this from a really strong source, that the Sabres were in heavily on Justin Falk. This would, of course, be their second.
Really?
Falk. But yes, which would make things very confusing. Have we ever had a team that has had two players with exactly the same name before?
But not the same spelling, yes.
Yeah, not the same spelling, but still, for the announcers. Falk with an E, Falk with an A. No, but anyway, no. So I think that I don't know. Again, I want to bring up a very important point that I think is, I don't know where Spectre gets his information from. He's a very great guy. I like Lyle a lot. But I don't know the whole concept of Carolina and Chicago. I can't stress enough how Carolina has felt like they have been hosed by Chicago on a couple of trades.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that it would be very surprising if that's the way. I honestly think, and I wrote this over the weekend, and I think that this is the case, is that I wrote this on Friday, actually, that I do believe that Chicago is trying to get Panarin back. I think that is their goal. I talked to a lot of people about it.
1 year, because they can't afford him long term.
Maybe not. I've been told that they think they have ways that they could afford him. I mean, it depends.
But Columbus is meeting with Panarin in France. That's what someone just put in the chat room.
No, they are meeting with Panarin in France.
They met with them, and the meeting lasted 45 minutes.
Okay,
that's not a good sign.
No,
I mean, from what I've heard, I've been all around the story a lot, and I've heard that Panarin wants to live on the coast, actually, which is kind of interesting. That he actually would like to live on either the West Coast or the East Coast, which does, of course, Chicago. For those of you
I've heard that too.
Who aren't familiar with geography, is not on the coast. But in Lake Michigan, you can pretend you're on a coast. But it looks kind of
like people in Buffalo do. I get it.
It looks like you're on the ocean. It's a big lake. But so I think that San Jose is a team to look for with Panarin. I really do, because remember San Jose, how close they were to Tavares. They've got money. They can still do something.
Yeah,
it's a great fit for them. It's a good place for him to live. But Columbus is asking a ton for Panarin, as they should, of course. But and I still think that they're still hoping that they can convince him to stay. Whether I don't know how that meeting went yesterday, so I'm trying to get to the bottom of it.
I don't think they're trading him. Like I don't think they could afford to trade him. I don't think even the guys you get back, it will mess up the zen of that team and what they might be able to do this year. And so I don't think he'll get traded.
But the Chicago thing is really interesting, right? So if you think about it, okay, remember this whole story. I've long heard this and believed that there's a little bit of a Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews thing going on here, right? Where they traded Panarin, who was Kane's line mate, for Saad, who was going to be Toews' line mate, right? And then Saad doesn't work out, and Kane's not happy about it.
Well, this is the one hurdle though that I can't get over about this. Panarin going back to Chicago. What the hell is Chicago sending them?
Yeah,
because
it would have to be. I mean, no, it'd have to be something incredibly significant.
It's not going to be Saad again. Artem Anisimov. I mean, no, I'm
going to throw this out there, and I heard this, and whether or not you can take it for what it's worth, and this is kind of strange too, but the Corey Crawford will be involved in this trade, and that is.
God.
But we don't even know his injury. He's not even healthy.
Right, he's not even healthy. But that is one of the names that would be talked about, which makes you wonder a little bit about, Bobrovsky's future.
Sure, because his contract's up in a year, but then who's playing net for Chicago?
Yeah, right.
And Ward, starting goalie.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, they might as well pack it up if that's the case.
Well, they've got to think about that anyway, because like you said, Crawford's not healthy, right? So
sure, but if you have Cam Ward for 20 games, you don't care.
You're maybe
to start the season. He could do that, but he can't play a whole season.
So I think that the Skinner thing is interesting for sure. But I haven't heard. I've looked into it, and this, of course, now, and I say this, he'll get traded there this afternoon. But I hear that Skinner's not on their radar, and it's an obvious thing. That it came out right away. Okay, this is obviously looking for Skinner, and of course, he's out there. He's the big guy, and they cleared $8.5 million of cap space, right? So it's an obvious thing that Skinner would be on the radar. But I was told he wasn't. So that another big player is on. So
it's almost like with Skinner because his name has been bandied about with a number of places, and it's almost like Carolina may be resigned to the fact that they can get almost as much from him at the deadline as a rental as they can right now with a year left in the contract. So why bother trading him? He can score goals for them through the end of February, and then they can move him and get something for him.
Yeah, right, exactly. To me, that's interesting, and I think that there's a lot that still has to play out there. I'm someone, of course, the rumor got out there they were going to get Erik Karlsson. I don't think that's the case at all.
Here's a funny thing about Carolina, right? So I'm looking at their lines, and everybody makes up lines in the summer, and that's fine. But if they're really going to count on Martin Netjes, Svechnikov, and Skinner as like a line, that's a gamble. Like, I love those kids, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if they're all going to click right away. Then you're going to put Jordan Stahl, let's say, with Justin Williams. Like, there's age there. Like, they really – there's a big divide still offensively on this team, and this is not a good enough offense as it stands.
Well, Russ,
what's crazy is Mike, go ahead.
To their defense, I think that line is probably going to end up being their third line, because the number 2 line is probably going to be Aho, Teravainen, and whoever.
So what's their number 1 line, Mike?
It's probably Stahl and Williams.
Skinner's not going to be there.
Stahl's their number 1 center. I'm
just saying, it's just this is not enough. They don't have enough offense to get even out of the first round. If they could even make the playoffs, I still don't understand what they're doing.
Yeah, their belief is, from what I've been told, that they think that, they looked at Vegas and they're like, okay, we're going to do what Vegas did. And it's completely bizarre because there's no correlation to that. There's no way you can even connect the two.
Their defense is better than Vegas. I'll give them that.
Their defense is better than Vegas. Their goaltending obviously isn't, but and their offense isn't. But at the same time, the owner's saying, well, look what Vegas did. We would get it, and everybody believes in Brind'Amour so much, and that's fine. But that's putting a lot on Brind'Amour as a coach who's still like inexperienced in that role.
I'll tell you what, their whole season offensively is riding on Svechnikov and Netjes.
Yeah.
Which is, again, when you're a team riding on rookies, it's either going to go one way or the other. Like we've seen what happens.
More than that, Russ, it's resting and relying on that killer combo of Mrazek and Scott Darling.
Right. Now, the funny thing is that we saw the contract of Elias Lindholm, and I got to tell you something. This trade looks so good for the Flames right now. And I know there's time to be settled on this, and I know, Adam Fox hasn't signed anywhere yet, and so that part of it, gets pushed off. But they got Lindholm on such a good deal, and again, Lindholm was like the assist leader in Carolina for the last couple of seasons. He had like 112 assists in a certain amount of games. Yeah. I don't understand how he was hurting their culture. Like, I don't get that whole thing.
What I was told was that he was such a fan of the old coach, and the coach is why he went there. So it was more or less, Peter said, I need Lindholm. And, I'm going to come here, but I need you to get him.
I think it's clearly a win for Calgary, but I have a little bit of a caveat, and that's getting Hanifin on the new deal, because right now Hanifin's an RFA. He hasn't signed his new deal. Yeah. We don't know what he's going to get paid. They're already paying, Giordano over $6 million. Brody is close to $5 million. Hamonic is on. Now this is the one benefit. Hamonic is a second pairing guy, and he's making less than $4 million, so it's a very friendly contract. So they might be able to afford to pay Hanifin close to what Giordano is making in the current market.
What's really funny about that, Mike, is you read the message boards. And I was reading the message boards today because someone said, we need to read the message boards on Calgary. Their fans overwhelmingly think they're going to get him for $4 million.
They're high, really. There is no way.
Oh, it's legal now in Canada. So.
Unless you're talking bridge deal, unless you're talking 2 year, 3 year.
No, we are talking bridge. They are talking bridge deal, but it's still
okay.
Isn't that like? A bridge deal. That's
if it's bridge deal, I'd say it's probably 4 to 4.5 on a 2 to 3 year deal. Because then
show something Carolina's doing, because before we get off of Carolina, it's World Emoji Day, and they just see the tweet they put out. So this is kind of fun, for what it's worth. Okay, so this is a tweet.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That's cool.
Made up of emojis to form, cool. Which is pretty insane, And someone said. The first reply on this is really funny. I'll show you the first reply on this.
Somebody's got a lot of time in their hands.
Oh my gosh! The first reply was some guy saying, "Wow, I feel bad for that intern." Yeah, there you go. That's probably about right. Some intern was said, "You got to make it an emoji picture of Rob Brindamore by the end of the day." Put it together. It's pretty good.
Here's something I want to point this out about Elias Lindholm for everybody in the chat room that says he's meh. He was meh there, and he still was their assist leader. Here's the thing. A couple of years ago, 14, 15, 15, 16, he was getting like 11 and 14 power play assists a year. Then it dropped to 9, and last year dropped to 3 when they were in complete disarray. If he plays on the second power play, even in Calgary, he's going to have a 50-point season.
And there's talk. Go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, Russ, you're talking up the assists a fair bit. So what are assists worth, right? What are they worth in a contract? So in 2016-17, he led in even strength assists. He was 3rd last season.
Right.
The year before that, he was, where are we? He was, he was way down there. He was 10th on the team. Like, he hasn't done anything consistent. I think he's overpaid, and Calgary's made a huge bet that he's going to be. What are assists worth? Isn't 10 goals worth $1 million?
Well, I think I had this discussion with a pro, right? And I believe the pro is right. You can't discount assists. I know people in the analytics world want to discount assists, especially the secondary assist. But you know what? It all leads up to a goal, so it is very important. And so, like, if you want to start discounting assists, then you better take away the 100 and something a year Wayne Gretzky used to get.
Especially with the fact that Lindholm is supposedly going to play on the left side with Monahan and Goudreau, and if that's the case,
he'll get 55 points.
Then you want him generating assists.
That's a line, man. That's a line. That's a great line. I love the way that.
Yeah.
No,
look, I'm not down on Lindholm. I'm just saying, if you're paying for assists, because that's what you're paying for with Lindholm. He hasn't cracked 20 goals. Right. Mm-hmm. You just gave him 4.85. You are making a bet that Elias Lindholm is going to proceed and get better at that rate. Because if you paid $4.85 million for, let's just say, let's go last season here.
Well, he's averaging 42 points a year the last 4 years.
Yeah, if you paid for 28 assists, that's what he had, total assists.
Right.
And total points of 44 points.
Right.
And you paid $4.85 million for him at that age, you probably overpaid.
No, but he's averaging 37 over the last 3 years. That's the point. They look at that and say, he'll get at least 40 assists here with our guys. And I agree with that.
Now, Peter, I'm right.
They might, and that's the bet, Russ. But if he doesn't, you've locked in something that you don't know anything. And isn't that what Calgary's been doing in weird ways? Like, isn't this just more of the same of what Calgary kind of does? Is makes these kind of weird bets, thinks they've got all these players, and then it doesn't pan out.
I think they've done that to some degree. I'll agree with you on that. But I also think if they are putting him on the line with those two guys, they know, look, end of the day, you could say whatever you want about Elias Lindholm, but he is a highly skilled guy who can skate.
I agree with you there. I'm just saying in this, I don't know if that contract tips the deal in Calgary's favor on this.
Well, you have to factor in that they bought, I think, 2 or 3 unrestricted years here. So
absolutely.
That raises, and I'm writing today actually because about Nylander with Toronto and how this contract I think is good news for them because you have Lindholm who averages around a little over 40 points a year the last 4 years. Nylander averaged 61 points the last 2 years. I don't think the difference between Lindholm and Nylander is that dramatic that you're going to say Nylander is going to make $7 million. I think Nylander is going to come in around 6.25 to 6.5, and that's a number I think that Toronto will be very happy about. But the comparables. I mean, the Nick Ehlers.
Okay, so put William Nylander in Carolina last year with the bomb of the team and bomb of the season they had. How many points do you think he gets?
I think he's playing center if he's playing in Carolina.
Right. So he probably only gets 45 points there last year based on that team.
And you have to factor in that Nylander has played last season definitely with Matthews and some of the previous year with Matthews. So
and that's my point is like you could put a guy like that, take him out of Toronto, put him in Carolina last year, and of course his numbers are going to drop like a stone.
Now,
so hang on, I wanted to go back to Lindholm here. If you're looking at it this way, Calgary had last season 8 guys with 20 or more total assists.
Yeah,
they traded away 2 of them. Hamilton had 27 and Ferland had 20. They also traded away 38 goals between those 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what do they replace it with?
Good point.
Just saying.
Yeah, and now
with hope. You replaced it with hope, and hope is never a plan.
I
did that for Eric.
You replaced it. You think Lindholm is going to score more. B, you replaced it with James Neal, who will probably score 20 to 25 goals.
Well, I'm talking in the trade, just the trade.
Oh, and then the trade
itself. Did the opposite, Peter. Plus, you're not counting for a guy like Jankowski kicking in this year.
No. All I'm talking about is I'm just saying from the trade point. I'm just talking. Isn't Jankowski on the market right now?
We're not factoring.
Who knows?
We're not factoring in that Dougie Hamilton wanted out, and that was a contributing factor in this deal as well.
Wait, let's factor this in. Michael Ferland 2 years ago had 25 points. He went from 25 points to 41 points.
And he's a free agent at the end of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how do you know he hasn't capped out? I think Michael Ferland has capped out on points, to be honest.
Yeah, possible.
Now, Peter, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up Trouba because the arbitration hearing is, I believe, Friday.
Yeah.
And I know it was Ken Wiebe. Is that's how you pronounce it? Yeah, he wrote something about that situation, and I of course I'm focused on this because my dream scenario is him being traded to another team wearing blue and white. But I don't think I'm not going to hold my breath on that. But where does it stand? Do you think it's going to get signed before, or what's going to happen here?
So you have up until Friday, and then you have about 2 days after to sign that deal, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Depending on how the arbitrator goes.
Mm-hmm.
Not been a hint of anything from anyone in this. So they're either locked down and have an agreement that no one's going to say anything, and they're working towards it. But I suspect that Connor Hellebuck out of the blue in the next 3 days, and because I'm leaving Winnipeg for Vancouver, and I'm going to be kind of radio silence for a few days after Thursday about noon, it'll happen right when I set my phone.
Yeah. No.
So that's how this is going to play out. And Mike, you'll have to log on as me and do the blog for me, please.
Sure.
Also, I'll DM you my password and everything, and you can write it because I'm not going to have access to any service. That's when it happens.
Oh yeah. No,
I saw yesterday. I put down. I threw out some numbers because these things are looming. Lowry's on the 22nd too. Like Kevin Cheveldayoff has some coming up, and then Tanev and Patan are a little later. But
he made pull Jeff Gordon, and Gordon just signed 4 or 5 guys the other day. Like, you could do it.
Yeah, I think that's what happened, because that's what happened in 2013 when Wheeler, Bogosian, and Little, they were all headed to arbitration, and boom, 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 it all happened. And so what happens here is I think it gets done. I think it's going to be in around about a 5.85 million AAV. And I think the issue here is, does Trouba want 4 years and to see what the team does in 4 years because they think that's where the window is? Right. Or does he want to go 6 to 8 and say, because he's 24 now, if he takes 6 years, he ends at 30 and he can cash out. And if he takes 4, he gets out a little earlier and he's freedom to say, I want to go win, or it didn't happen in this window because they only believe that's where the window lies.
Yeah.
That's what I think will be interesting in this deal.
He goes 6 to 8. There's no way that contract is less than $6.5 million. No way.
And I don't know if he's a 6. That's what I'm saying. I've said this before. Is Jacob Trouba your new benchmark for $6.5 million a year, given the other contracts right now?
Well, he may not. He may not garner it in terms of the type of defenseman he is. But when you're 2 years away from unrestricted free agency, and you're talking about buying 4 to 6 years of UFA years, you're paying over $6 million. And if you're not, then maybe the compromise.
Look at Yossi. Look at Ellis. Look at these other guys. Look at Larson. Even look at. I'm just saying, if those are his peers, how do you move him towards more of where Burns is? I mean, he's not even matching what Carlson did when Carlson signed for $6 million.
Right.
So is that inflate? Like, that's what I'm saying is, I don't know. Like, in fairness to Trouba, he might be that next benchmark based on what his game is, that he sets the benchmark for a solid top pairing right D, just no glamour. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, totally, absolutely.
I just don't know if he's the guy or not. Someone might know that.
The other thing I wanted to bring up on Calgary briefly, I was getting a text about this too. Well, I got a couple texts about, but I can't talk about it yet, but I will. Is so Calgary, I wrote today about Sam Bennett being in talks again. Now, I feel bad for Sam Bennett in a lot of ways. His name comes up in more trade talks for being so young. But now does signing Lindholm really put Bennett is it sending Bennett out of there, do you think?
Sam Bennett is the Alex Galchenyuk of Calgary. That's basically what it is. He's a guy that they thought was going to be a center. It hasn't worked. He's been yo-yoed back and forth between center and wing. I think he's got a lot of talent. Maybe the best thing for him is just to get the hell out of there. I think Calgary can get value back because he's 23 years old, 22 years old, and he's not old. He's definitely talented. So, I could see that a team like Buffalo might be interested in him, but I don't know what.
Yeah, I've heard their name mentioned for sure. I heard Boston.
It would be a reclamation project in Boston. I mean, the question is, what would be going back the other way? Probably young players.
I like him in Boston. Actually, I think he would fit well into the way they play. And I think the problem with Bennett is there was just too much focus on him for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so, I just think that there was over expectations. Like, his high was 36 points and 18 goals. He hasn't been able to match that. But he doesn't. I mean, when's the last time he had guaranteed line mates and knew exactly what he was going to do? Even Peters with him could work out. It could.
Yeah. He's been all over the place there.
Right. Actually did him a disservice, Russ, is when they called him up, and he played in the playoffs that year, and he played so well that the expectations got raised dramatically. And then he didn't play as well going forward, and then they questioned what his position was, and I think it's more disappointment than anything. But I think he's a good player. I think if he gets into the right scenario, he could definitely be a beneficial player for another team. But I just don't know whether it's going to work in Calgary. It hasn't worked yet.
They're a little bit different, but they're not that different in the amount of points they'll get. We've had the same discussions about Sam Reinhart. Buffalo hung in there with them, and now they see that, hey, Sam Reinhart's getting better. I think someone can make Sam Bennett better, but I don't know if it's going to be Bill Peters or, like you said, it's going to be somebody else. But I don't think he's getting above 50 points, but I think, he could be a 40-point guy for sure if somebody just dials it in with him, and I think maybe he's ready for that. I mean, he's not. Look, what is he? 22?
Yeah. He's not a top line guy, but he definitely could be valuable as a second or third line guy. So
yes.
Okay, so what I want to do before getting into the final end of the show here is we have our first ever X Addict sent to us by a viewer, which I think is kind of cool.
Wow.
So and X Addict, for those of you who are familiar, is where we try to do something kind of like old school hockey that we find around our house, in your attic, in your garage, whatever. That's kind of interesting, This is really cool. So this is I know Russ especially.
I can't see it. My computer's frozen. So.
Oh really? Oh man,
yeah, I can't see
you're gonna have to describe it for me. This is gonna be like
no one can see this.
I can't see it.
I can't see it.
I can't see it either.
What? No, I haven't put it up yet.
No, but I might be able to either way. Sorry.
I'm putting it up now. All right.
Okay.
All right. So this is what I'm putting up here. Let me see if I can get this fully on the screen.
I'll try and go to YouTube and look at it.
All right. So
just mute the YouTube.
I know.
All right. So I'm going to bring this back here. Okay. There we go. All right. So this, I want to, because I really want to know, Russ, if you knew what this was. Because this is from 1957, 58. And what this is, since you probably can't see it or whatever, is so a friend of mine named Steve sent this in. And so if you want to send something to X-Addict, what you do is you send it to Eklund@HockeyBuzz.com, put X-Addict in the subject, and if we put it on the air, we'll send you some like happy little note back, and maybe we'll give you a prize.
Keep it up. I'm looking at it. Okay, so he basically sent you a wrapper from the hockey card set. Yeah, they're worth something. I mean,
right. This
I don't know who kept. See, the funny thing is like that's like from the Wax Packs days. I don't know who was smart enough to keep those things in good condition because
that's the point. That's what he said. The point was. I mean, he's a big time collector, a really big collector.
They're very fragile. The wax is very,
And he said no one would just throw these out. So this is 1930. Like I said, 1957 to 58. Then the next one here, which he sent me, which is really cool too, is this one. So this is. So you got that there? Okay, there you go.
Ice King's chewing gum.
This is from 1933-34. Wow. All right. And what he said was, what's kind of interesting about this, and he said exactly the same thing, is that these are really valuable now because no one saved these things. Like this is something that you would just get your cards, but the artwork on these, he said, I love the artwork on them, and they really are.
Just like a box of Bazooka, you probably got them inside the box.
Well, I can tell you one thing. If that's from 1933, the gum must taste like crap.
I know. Look at that, right?
I'll tell you this. The one thing collectors have to be careful about with these wax packs, and it goes all the way through the 70s, people used to iron them and reseal them with crap. They used to pull out the good cards, put them back in there, and then put like garbage in there and sell them for a lot of money. And so that's where you want to like get these things authenticated because it is very easy to dupe a pack of those.
Yeah. Like look at this promotion that I had going on here. So it says, free pictures of hockey players. Send 50 of any Ice King wrappers. That's what this is. Send on these 50 of these wrappers, and it will mail you your choice of one of the following pictures: Howie Morenz, Happy Day, Hooley Smith, King Clancy, R.L. Juliet, or Alan Shields. So,
I'd probably take the Howie Morenz. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at. I mean, this is like, it's pretty amazing when you think about like 19. Like this is the hockey cards were wrapped in almost 80 years ago, right? I mean, this is like pretty crazy. So I thought that was really.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. So if you got anything else from X Addict, send it through and we'll put it on the air. Okay. Then to end, I do, because we weren't on the air yesterday, I definitely wanted to talk about Ray Emery for a bit.
Yep.
And what a shocking situation this was. And I know you covered Ray like I did in Philly, and also in the Stanley Cup final in Ottawa. And what I really respected about Ray Emery, and I think it was really underplayed. And he was very humble about it for everything, obviously his days in Ottawa were crazy, right? And there was a lot of stuff that went on there. The White Hummer was legendary. The whole the drug stuff that went around, and not I don't know what was true and what wasn't, but all the rumors that went around back then, I never really dug into it too much. And Jason Spezza is a really good friend of his, and a friend of mine would say it's not, it was just everything was blown out of proportion. Don Brennan had a really great piece, I guess you guys probably saw, that was fascinating, where Emery talked about how he was going to do some bungee jumping in the off season to Brennan when they were had locker clean out day, and Spezza goes up to him afterwards and says, "Do me a favor, don't write that." It's just Jason Spezza says to Don Brennan, because Ray's just starting to get his game together, and people are going to freak out if they see he's bungee jumping in the off season, right? So it was kind of interesting. Jason was looking out for him, but what I really respected about him was, he was humbled by the whole thing. He was a great goalie in Ottawa. I mean, he was as fast as anybody. He kind of reminds his style and everything in that run, for those who are younger and don't really remember. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but if you're really young, you don't remember that too well. His style and everything really reminds me a lot of what we just saw from Marc-Andre Fleury in a lot of ways, like the similar kind of quickness back and forth, huge saves at huge times. And the Ottawa run was fantastic. But then, of course, the Senators just couldn't take a lot of stuff he did. They released him, which was surprising. He ends up going to Russia and playing, hurts his hip, comes back and plays in different situations. But when his hip injured, hip was injured, he comes back to Philly and actually did very well for the Flyers, and as a totally different goalie, as if he had completely relearned the position from when he was in Ottawa because of his hip. He could no longer rely on that incredible back side-to-side quickness, and became a.
Well, yeah, because he had to have a piece of his shin bone grafted into his hip bone, which no player had ever successfully come back from that 100%.
Yeah.
Not to mention a goalie, right? Who's doing all? I mean,
Right.
He was smart enough to play incredibly positionally. And I remember talking to him one time and him saying, "Yeah, if I had paid this much attention to positional play when I had all my health," he says, "I would have been dangerous." He said that, and it's probably true, because he in Ottawa just was sort of a very much of his numbers weren't outstanding because people scored more goals then a little bit, but it was in that playoff run. But his huge momentum saves during that Stanley Cup run were just. And then remember, he shared time with Gerber at different points too. There's all kinds of controversy on him. So
here's the thing: if you take away the controversy for a minute, in Philly, he was really good. And actually, during that season, he was coming back because he only played 29 games the year before. He was very philosophic. The players were behind him. He would tell us everything he was doing every moment. He would always talk to us, and you felt like you got to know him through the struggle, and he overcame it. But what I always thought about Ray Emery long term was, he had the boxer's mentality, right? If he wasn't a goalie, he'd be a boxer. And he always wanted to fight guys on the ice. He did fight guys on the ice. He had that demeanor off the ice. And so, boxers always led a hard life. And Ray Emery led a similar lifestyle. He really did.
He did. And the famous game against the Capitals, you'll always remember, that was when he raced down the ice. That Flyers was it Capitals or was it Ottawa?
No. The famous game was against the Sabres after Chris Neal knocked out Chris Drury. Emery came down the ice and first fought Marty Baron and then fought Andrew Peters.
Right. He didn't fight Peters for long though. Peters.
No. But it was enough, Ross. I mean, it was like very rarely would a goaltender take on an enforcer, even though Andrew Peters wasn't much of one.
I just watched that video, and he was smiling when it happened, like he wanted that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he liked.
No, he did. He said it was his favorite part of the game. I remember saying that, and just wasn't there a big Capitals one too though? in Philly. I'm sure it was Capitals won in Philly. Yeah, because I remember this really well. That they,
that one I don't remember.
Yeah, that there was like set records for penalty minutes, and Ray Emery was like,
Well, they had one with Ottawa that set records for.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the one with Ottawa, right? And that was Emery skating down the ice and getting in a fight. That one, that was crazy.
I missed that game. That was one of the games I missed.
I missed it too. I was out of in Philly, but I remember hearing the whole thing. So yeah, that was it's just tragic, when you lose a player, and it really just, our heart goes out to everybody around him. And he had a lot of friends in the NHL. There were a lot of people that were pulling for him, I think, through a lot of different things. You did kind of want to root for him, you couldn't help but want to root for him because, and Ottawa, he was, I remember covering that Ottawa thing. I remember some stuff where he was a little bit dismissive with media, but I don't remember as much. He wasn't, at least in the Stanley Cup Finals, I didn't find him very difficult to deal with.
No, I thought he was fine to deal with, but again, I wasn't in Ottawa. I had somebody covering in Ottawa. The thing about Emery was he was young then. He got to be an older, mature guy. He still had demons off the ice. There's no question about it. Yeah. But I did feel like, and you go and look online, and there's a ton of testimonials from former teammates, and you usually, for a guy like this that had these troubles off the ice, you usually don't see that. And so, I saw Carcillo and I saw Bissonnette, and actually Kyle Dubas chimed in because
Dubas signed him as on a PTO a couple years ago when the Marlies had played 7 goaltenders and the Leafs had called up a bunch. He played 3 games. That was his last pro in North America, was playing 3 games for the Marlies.
Usually you won't see that many people chime in about a guy, but like I always say, he was interesting, and that was the thing about him, was even though you felt like you knew him, you probably didn't know him, but still he would let you know whatever part he wanted to let you know.
Yeah, that's true. And he was when he was on, he was crazy on, in games he was able to get really he was able to really change.
He was a good goalie. I mean, he was.
And in Philly, I remember when they first got him. I remember everybody being, "Oh, what are they doing?" I remember that whole feeling. What are we doing, getting Ray Emery? He just came back. But then when he came here, he was, because I thought, oh, he's going to fight because remember the Gerber thing, and everything. He was great. He got along really well with his other goalies when he was here. He never fought. He was always solid. He was a solid teammate. So.
And that was the start of it. That's a great point that you made, Ek, because I remember when he was in the goalie rotation and not playing a lot. He was not disruptive at all. And I remember talking about that and writing about that because that was the worry from writers. It wasn't the worry from the Flyers, and clearly Paul Holmgren talked about him the other day too. That was the amazing thing, was he took that all in stride. He was a very good teammate.
He was very humbled by what happened, I think, with Ottawa and what happened in being sent to Russia. I really think that, that really gave him perspective, and he was really intelligent. Like, people don't realize how smart he was. He got a lot of players out there who are smart, but I found, and even though the way he talked, he didn't necessarily talk, in grandiose ways, but you could tell just by talking to him and talking to him about parts of the game, and when he would describe certain plays, he was really smart. Like, just one of those guys who had a huge amount of hockey intelligence, a high IQ for hockey. So anyway, very missed, and really, really, really sorry to everybody out there related. That is all the time we have for today, and we really appreciate you guys watching in the summer. We know it's we're going to try to do it probably a little bit earlier. We were talking about maybe doing shows a little bit earlier. We'll figure that out. But just stay tuned. We'll always be here. I'm going to have another blog for you this afternoon. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.